to get everyone out of the bar. Thank you for finally coming in. I think you three were the worst as well. So welcome everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. And my name's Naomi Tosick. I'm one of the co-founders of the Office Space. So we love to do these events just because we are a business community and we have lots of different things going on with all of our clients. But for us, at the heart of, I guess, why we're in business is to make money and to make a difference. So hopefully we can make a bit of a difference tonight about some of the attitudes that you have around finances, and we have a fantastic panel that I'm going to introduce in a moment. For me, I've been doing a bit of research and I've kind of had a giggle with some of the girls that it was Leonardo DiCaprio taught me everything I knew about investment. I just hadn't paid a lot of attention to it, and I think it's interesting tonight we do have Sophie to represent kind of the girl power, but I think there's a lot that the guys are going to contribute as well to both male and female investment and how to invest for business and independently. So in the process of my research, I went through the ASIC website, which isn't as terrible as it sounds, but basically they're talking about financial literacy and describing it as a combination of financial knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviours necessary to make sound financial decisions based on personal circumstances and to improve financial well-being. So I love that it's about the attitudes as well, and I think we sort of hear a lot of things like the Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's about the attitudes that you are instilled from a young age, but I think you're never too old to sort of change the way that you approach money. So before I do introduce this wonderful panel, I do have a disclosure, and I won't mumble it as quickly as they do on those superannuation ads. But please note that, and thank you Kanara, because this was from a CBA event. They put up this disclosure, and I thought it was actually really important, that the advice provided by me or the panellists tonight is general in nature, so it does not take into account your individual financial needs, circumstances or objectives. And of course, before making any decisions, we recommend that you would consult a financial planner to take into account all your personal situations. So are we clear on that? So let's introduce the panel. So first up, I've lost my, here we go. Let me introduce Brendan Maloney. So he holds a degree in commerce and in economics, in finance, and completed postgrad studies with the Chartered Institute of Managed Accountants. So professionally, you worked for 11 years with the Bank of Scotland in some really senior positions before being headhunted to become the Chief Operations Officer for rocketing investment startup Acorns Grow. So please welcome COO of Acorns Grow, Brendan. Come and take a seat. So secondly, I'm delighted to introduce a very impressive businesswoman. So she worked for 15 years in financial roles for renowned companies such as Max Mara. Why would you leave that? I can tell you why. So she went out on her own and then started the Account Studio. So it's a bookkeeping and account service catering for creative entrepreneurs. But beyond that, it's very much Sophie's evolved into business mentorship and strategic management of businesses as well. So on top of that, she's written a book, Creative Collection. So for the best question at the end, we've got a book as a prize, but also for $20 you can come and pick them up. So Sophie was going to give them away, but I think because it's about money and investment, we better. So I'm the kind of iron fist here. So please welcome financial consultant, entrepreneur, author and business strategist Sophie Andrews. And then lastly, Mark's given up his regular slot talking to other people about investment. He's a regular on Radio 2 UE and also some great content, video content on the website. But Mark has incredible credentials. Not only was he raised in a business, in a family that really focused on financial well-being. His grandfather was involved with the Reserve Bank of Australia. He was the first currency exchange. So I think it's in your blood. But also Mark studied at the prestigious UIC in Barcelona. He got a scholarship to continue his Bachelor of Economics and Business. So we're talking about a really clever panel that we've got for you tonight. So please welcome Senior Financial Advisor and Partner from Knowledge Bank IQ, Mark Welsh. Alrighty. So I just, of course, have acknowledged and kind of set up the scene that this is a very clever panel that we have here, but I do want to just make sure that you've got the credentials to then go on and answer some more financial questions. So Sophie, let's just start with you. So before you started the account studio, you did all of your study with bookkeeping and things like that. So how important was that financial literacy that you had to then go out and start your own business?
I mean, I think my actual degree originally is in languages and business. So I sort of came from a different industry, I guess, if I came into finance. And when I moved to Australia 25 years ago, there was no call for European languages here, and that's when I kind of pivoted. I mean, I think that definitely it's been helpful, but also having worked for 15 odd years in smaller businesses, averaging maybe 3 to 15 staff on average, you know, you get to be across everything that's involved in running a business.
Yeah.
So you get involved in, you know, being on the shop floor, you get involved in negotiating with stock control, you know, everything. So you get that really well-rounded experience. And I think just dealing day in, day out with people's finances, you get to see what works and what doesn't work. So yeah, it's definitely been helpful.
So I think you're an unusual commodity in this industry because you have that creativity, but you've also got that logical side of your brain. So for us mere mortals, how do we actually kind of put the two together? Because you tend to get one or the other.
Yeah, you do. And I think it's probably a training thing. So I'm probably more creative by nature, but I was encouraged to be more academic as a child, and so I kind of flip between the two. I think it's finding a way that it works for you to understand. So for all the creative people that we deal with, we need to talk to them about it in a language that they understand and at quite a high level, and give them maybe 2 or 3 sort of key points that they need to be able to track. That would probably be the key to how we do it. And we employ staff that aren't probably a traditional accounting staff. You know, they are very much able to talk in a language that people understand.
And I think it talks about context as well, knowing what the numbers mean in the context of the business.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, finance is viewed as this really boring topic that everybody hates dealing with. And, you know, at the end of the day, not to us here, but to a lot of people. And, you know, at the end of the day, money is what buys your freedom, right? Which is what we're all after. So if you look at the end result of what it is you want to achieve, and then you form a structure to get to that point, and you don't see it as kind of the enemy or something that you've got to do or got to get your head around, but you see it as something that's going to lead to what you actually want, and look at it in a different way.
Yeah. And I can personally vouch for that. I used to get nauseous looking at the books with our previous bookkeeper, and then I think the more you educate yourself, the more you can kind of cope with that. So someone who's not nauseous with numbers, you work for for Bank of Scotland for a good decade. So tell us about the roles that you were doing with them, and 4 different continents, I must add as well.
Yeah. So I grew up in Newcastle. And then when I finished my degree, a couple of the boys said, let's go to Melbourne or Sydney. And that's not far enough away from home. So I jumped on a plane to London and did some work with a National Children's House in a charity role when I first landed for a couple of months, and then joined Churchill Insurance, which is the nodding dog. And all about pet insurance, and I didn't even know what that was. And then a role at RBS came up, and it was all great, let's get into investment banking. So I was in London for just on 5.5 years. Then they moved me out. I was supposed to have 6 months in Hong Kong setting up the finance division, because RBS had just bought NatWest, which is like the CBA of the UK from a retail customer point of view. They expanded to Asia. I moved out to Hong Kong to set up the finance function, 6 months there, 6 months in Singapore. But I was having such a good time in Hong Kong. The Rugby Sevens was on. It was great. Hang on a sec, this is really good. So I ended up staying there, and I spent the next 3 years in Hong Kong, and it was we were having a really good time, and we still did have a good time. And then RBS, GFC, ABN AMRO purchase, everything went a bit pear-shaped, and we went from 1,700 staff in Asia Pacific overnight to 35,000. 7 countries to 17 countries in Asia. So then I sort of worked pretty hard for the next few years to sort all that mess out. Moved back down here. Went back up to Singapore for the last 3 years, sort of running Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
So that gave me some
Now I find it really interesting. You've moved from obviously a business that is so infrastructure heavy to Acorns Grow, which is the complete opposite. So tell us about the tap on the shoulder. How did you become involved in
that? That probably had something to do with us not coming in.
Yeah.
Because when I left RBS, a friend and I opened a bar up in Newcastle. and another one here in Circular Quay. And it took me a while, but I realised that I much prefer to be on that side of the bar than this side of the bar, serving people. So I sort of got bars up and running, and I said to a few guys...
You're not a people person, you know?
Well, I am, but just this side of the bar, not serving people.
Yes.
So there was a few lessons learnt there. Very interesting what happens late in the night in a pub that you can remember. And I had all the RBS guys down because, Brendan owns a bar, let's go down and have free beer. And I said to them, look, bar's going really well, I'm just starting to get a little bit bored, I'm cleaning kegs and things like that, it's not me. I want to do something. I don't want to get back into corporate finance per se, but I'd love to do something. And so 3 days later, fortunately one of the investors here and the CEO, George Lucas, through mutual friends said, I hear you want to do something. What does Acorns mean? And I said to him, well, okay, what does that mean? Because I didn't know anything about Acorns. And he said, meet me at the AMP building at 2 o'clock on Monday. So I put the suit and tie on, had a haircut, had a shave, and we were with the lawyers to sign the agreement to bring Acorns to Australia. And he said, you've got half an hour to an hour to read this, make sure it's all okay, and off we go. I said, okay. I didn't really know what happened. I was off to Bali for the next week. So I did all my research and I thought, cool. And the thing that got me excited about Acorns was that it's not an investing. You're not looking for high capital gains. You're not looking for long yields, high growth, anything like that. It's a savings tool.
Yeah.
And off the back of that, it creates financial literacy. And it's exactly what Save was saying. If we can empower young Australians, I was fortunate enough with my family to understand a bit about money, and I appreciate how hard it is to make $1. Therefore, as my wife would say, I don't spend $1.
Yeah.
But it's getting that education and then passing it through to the generations where I think something like Acorns, low-cost model, easy to read, easy to understand, can make that difference.
Yeah. So I'm a method interviewer. I've downloaded the Acorns app and I've been one of the paying customers as well. So basically, we'll explain it a bit more, but you are chipping away at this app. Sort of, there's really minimal fees. There's not a lot of...
So give it in a nutshell?
In a nutshell. Yeah, that's what I've written down. So basically, so in an acorn shell. So basically, you can put in $20, $5, whatever it is, and just make it a monthly thing or a top up as lumps. But also, I like that you can buy a coffee and then opt to top up your...
So what Acorns
purchases.
is, in a nutshell, is a micro-investing tool. So the founders, Jeff and Walter, Jeff's the young son, Walter's the old guy in the US, that he started the investment banking arm of E-Trade, which sort of late 90s, early 2000s, some of the older guys will know that. So he knows what he's doing. And his son said, all my mates at uni don't know how to get into the market. They want to trade. And I'm doing some research at the moment. Something like 70% of millennials want to get into the stock market, but they don't know how, or they think it's too expensive because they're not researching and they want the information, but they're not willing to look for it. So Jeff created this idea of micro investing. So what that means is, for as little as $5, you can get into the stock market. Now, when I say stock market, I mean our portfolios. There's 5 different portfolios standard, and then there's a new ethical, responsible portfolio we launched 15th of June. But you can choose one of these portfolios, and each one of those portfolios has 7 different ETFs in it. Now, it's called conservative down this end. Everybody knows what that means, and we keep the terminology simple so everyone understands, up to an aggressive portfolio. It's the same 7 ETFs across those portfolios. It's just the asset weighting. So if you're in the conservative one, it's Australian equities, Australian cash, and Australian bonds, government bonds. So pretty conservative. And then when we go up to the other end, it's international equities, Asia, Europe, and the US, and a bit more Australian equities, and then minimal cash from it. So we create it very simple, but for as low as $5. Now people say, well, I can't get into the market for $5 because I'm on ComSec and it's $19.95 a trade. E-Trade, $15.95 a trade. But what we do is we collectively bring everybody's $5 into it, and that might give me $100, and then the share is $101, so the Acorns house will buy that extra one. So I'll go to the market and buy that whole share, and then I then send it all back in the percentages that were weighted for you putting in your money. So it creates that awareness and the markets. And in the app, there's a nice little daily performance graph that updates every sort of 15 minutes with the actual current feed of the price of those things to show you what your market's doing. So it's educating.
So I'm going to jump to Mark on the end, who's more of the... You're dealing, Brendan, with a lot of the millennials. So from you, Mark, you're dealing with a lot of the kind of the older superannuation funds. maybe for you, what are the different attitudes that you see with that set?
Well, the thing is, I'm kind of convinced that I'm not a financial planner anymore, and I'm more of a psychologist. and basically, it's about fighting greed and fear. So basically, you know, we had the 2008 crash, and everyone's been scarred. But it's funny how people tend to forget what's happened, and now everyone's complaining that, you know, where are the returns? Why am I not getting 15%? So everyone's kind of greedy now. But then something happens. There's a little bit of a jolt in the market. Market drops 10%, which is not a lot, but it's enough to scare you, and then everyone's conservative again. So basically, I'm a stop loss between people's money and their attitude, and it's basically really we've got propeller heads and people smarter than me that are looking at all these things and analysing what's the best investment, and it's me just transmitting to the client what they have to do and what they should be doing. And it's really about stopping them from doing stupid things. Yeah. I mean, I hear over and over again people say, I lost money in the GFC. I'm like, how's that? Well, they lost money because when it got down to the bottom, they sold. The worst thing that you can do. And they never recovered because they weren't in the market when the market recovered. If we look at the market and how long it usually takes to recover, the longest the market's ever taken to recover, not including the Great Depression of 1929, was 1,100 days. So really that's about 3 years. It's not that long in the scope of things. And when it comes to investing, time is of essence. Yeah. You know, I think one of the most important things about investing is that you have to give your investments time, and people aren't patient. One of the good things about dealing with old people or older people is that they are patient. Yeah. You know, so my average client is 68. So they know how the markets work probably better than I do.
And what's their average investment?
It's about 1.6 million. Yeah, that's liquid assets that they invest with us. Doesn't mean that they don't have other assets, so they'll probably have properties and things like that. So it's quite a high net wealth client, and they're very demanding. I mean, I get phone calls Sunday morning. When you're dealing with people's money, there's a saying, money never sleeps, and God, that's true, because I don't sleep a lot. And it's like I said, I'm more of a psychologist. I mean, everything I studied in theory from university, I mean, I've never touched back on it ever again. Yeah. And it's more about dealing with clients and trying to tell them, don't do silly things.
So tell us about the intel with Knowledge Bank, and you're a partner at Knowledge Bank. So what's the sort of portfolios that you guys, how do you actually pull together the different funds? And if you can explain as well an ETF.
Yeah. So an ETF is an exchange traded fund, and it operates similar to a managed fund, but it's not a unitized system, and you can buy it like a normal stock, and you can buy different ETFs that represent different sectors, and I'm sure you'll be able to explain an ETF better than I can, but it's usually a low cost managed fund, so it's a really good alternative. We use them a lot. I tend to like a different mix, so I like direct shares, I like ETFs, and there are certain managed funds and hedge funds that we use. When we're putting together a portfolio, we reverse engineer it. So basically, we look at what the client's trying to achieve. That is first and foremost, and then we start to reverse engineer it and say, okay, well, what's the minimum amount of risk that we need to take to achieve those goals? So if a client's got $2 million and they want to get $100,000, well, that's easy. You know, getting a 5% return is not hard. So why take the risk of trying to get 10% when you can risk losing a lot of money? And then it draws back to, you know, the difference between what risk and volatility is. And I think that's something that people really need to understand. You know, if I ask you a question, do you think Commonwealth Bank's at risk of going bankrupt?
No, Kunara.
No? Okay. So, but is...
have that discussion if you like.
Yeah, we can have it. So it's not it's not going to go bankrupt, right? So the risk of it going bankrupt is very low. But is it a volatile stock? By God, it is. It's very volatile. It went to $96, and then it's dropped to, what is it now? 70 something?
You probably checked this morning.
80, 81, I don't know, I don't follow it that much, but it's very volatile. So you've got to know the difference between volatility and risk. The risk of Commonwealth Bank going bankrupt, zero or close to zero, but it's a very volatile stock. So if you know that difference, you can put up with volatility.
Is it share or volatile as in it's listed?
It's volatile because it's listed. It has nothing to do with the operation, but it's a volatile stock. If you put $1 million in Commonwealth Bank like a client of mine had, and it went from $1 million to 800, 700, 650, that's pretty volatile. For me, non-volatile would be less than a 1% variance. So in essence, people need to understand. Now, for me, a term deposit is more risky than investing in Commonwealth Bank, because in the long run, you've got what we call longevity risk, which is the risk of you running out of money because it's not producing the returns that you need. So for me, Commonwealth Bank is a safer bet than term deposits, but you just need to understand that. And I think that's the difference between people that know what they're doing and people that don't.
So what are other factors that come into it? So there's risk and return, there's volatility. What other things are you looking at?
Well, we look at that with fees. It's not that important to our clients, because if they're achieving what they need, then they're happy to pay for it. But I guess we're financial planners, and this is, I think, where a lot of people get it wrong. They think we're brokers or that we day trade. We don't. I consider myself to be more of a project manager. So I basically help clients manage their money to achieve their goals. Yeah. And I liaise not only with their accountants and their lawyers, but we basically oversee all the different layers of their financial situation to help them achieve what they need to. And a lot of my clients are travelling, so most of them are in Europe now, and they want someone that they can trust that can look after their money.
I'm glad you said trust. That's the thing that I want to pick up on, and maybe I'll throw it to you, Sophie. Yeah. For all of you are dealing with people's money, how do you actually get that trust relationship and that to someone to actually trust you with their money?
I mean, I think it comes down to longevity in business. It comes down to your credibility. Those are probably the two key factors. I mean, in terms of building that trust, it's the clients that you've worked with, it's, winning awards, it's sitting on boards, it's all those kind of things that add to your credibility.
And for you, networking's really important.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been actively networking probably for about 15 years, I guess. And, for me, networking is about going out and meeting people, because I like talking to people and I like hearing people's stories and I like being able to help other people. That's good networking. Bad networking, which you see a lot of, is where people go out and they specifically target people in the room that they think are going to give them business. Yeah. But that's not the way to network. It's a long-term strategy, and for some people it's very easy to do because you just like being social and you're interested in other people. But I think for some people they can struggle to do that. But I mean, I also know, in terms of credibility, I know plenty of business owners who've been in business a long time and they've dealt with incredibly well-known clients that they never speak about. All that sort of stuff adds to your credibility and should be highlighted.
And so for you, Brendan, you're also involved in the marketing of Acorns here in Australia as well. How are you sort of en masse looking to get the message out there about Acorns being a safe thing and also a really accessible platform?
Yeah, I think that's a hard one for us, because people, social media, I love it, but it also drives me nuts because it gives everybody a voice. Yeah. Some of the language, people, I don't even write that to my mates. Yeah. But if we were Acorns powered by CBA, powered by Macquarie, I think that would give us a hell of a lot more credibility. But we're not, and everybody's like, well, is it a scam? Is it a pyramid scheme? Is it a Ponzi? What is it? And whilst, with any sort of fintech, there's always early adopters, and they've been great. And we had 20,000 on our waiting list before we actually had a product to launch, and they were what we call the early adopters. So that was great and exciting. But then there's, and it's probably not the right term, but there's a lot of sheep. So I never buy the first iPad that comes out. I get the second one. Yeah. I let them iron out the bugs, I let them sort it out, and then that's what we're starting to see now. We've had some very good sign-ups a year after we've launched. We let people know we've been here for a year, your money's safe. We're very, very responsive on our customers because of social media, because if you don't respond within 3 hours to them, then they'll write another post, it's been 3 hours, but I haven't got a response. Well, it is 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, you've had a couple of drinks and you want your money back, but you can't get it. So it's just being responsive, being very correct. Look, from the RBS point of view, RBS was at its peak, ABN happened, and we had to dismantle that business. We're in 35 countries when I was in Asia Pacific. When I left, we'd put it down to 12. So we shrunk the business to greatness. What I've done and what excited me about the Acorns opportunity is to build it to greatness. Get those foundations, get the policies, procedures, the manuals, everything in line ready to go so that when we do scale, we're not panicking, we don't get a bad reputation. And we were on a current affair 2 Tuesday nights ago, and a mate texted me, and it was 7:05, and my heart just went, oh.
Yeah.
I raced out, turned on the TV, and fortunately it was a great article.
Yeah.
But if something does go wrong with retailers and retailers' money, it will be on Channel 7, it will be on Channel 9, and we'll have to close up the business.
Yeah.
So it's being that responsive and being honest and open. And we had a comment earlier. In the US, they make it difficult to close an Acorns account. I have a big yellow button that says close your account. So people are reinforced by the fact that they can get their money back at any time.
Yeah.
And that
I
was
think
what
it's
makes
really
the difference.
important.
Yeah.
And then we're talking, of course, referencing Konari here. I was interested to know that even though you're a financial planner for CommBank, you don't have to give CommBank advice. And I wanted to sort of know what governs each of you. You obviously represent different portfolios, but is it sort of coming down to your personal views about what's the best thing? What's the code of ethics that governs how you interact with your clients?
Well, for me, it's we've got propeller heads. They don't like sunlight and they don't like people. They like analysing numbers, and they come to me with information, and then I give it to my clients. And again, it's just a matter of fitting the right product or investment with the right client and their goals. I mean, we're all 95% of financial planners in Australia are licensed through a bank, and our license is through NAB, so they don't own me. But I can't say I'm independent because I unfortunately trade under their license. But I try and steer away from the NAB products because, clients obviously question it and they go, well, what are you getting out of it? And even though I say to them, look, I'm not getting a penny out of them because I'm a fee-for-service financial planner, they still have that hesitation. So we try and stick to ETFs and direct shares. So we have what we call a wrap account, and that allows people to invest with direct ETFs and things like that. I love the concept of Acorns, and we kind of apply the investment theory that they have to our investment accounts. I think when it comes to investing, one of the most important things is time, is giving your investments time. I just can't stress that enough. Some of the most important decisions that I've made with my personal investments and made a lot of money, at one stage they were my worst performing investments. And if I would have sold them, I would have lost money. Yet I held on to them for 3 or 4 years, and then they ended up being one of my best investments. So really it just comes down to, obviously you've got to do your fundamental research and technical research, but trying to time the market, I mean, it's all stick to the basics. If you don't understand it or know it, don't do it. We saw a couple of years ago, this investment with the wood trees. Everyone was doing it because there was a really massive tax write-off. Well, a lot of people lost a lot of money because it was actually quite a complex investment strategy, and it just went downhill and a lot of people lost money. Well, I stuck to my basic investment fundamentals and none of my clients invested in that, so we didn't lose a penny. I invest in boring, old, blue chip stocks and ETFs. That's basically it.
So let's talk about the ETFs. I phoned a friend for this question because last year, this month, we do this every year in July, this investment piece, and we had the top investment banker twice in a row, Tim Church from UBS. And he wanted you to comment, Mark, on basically, it's a curly question, but basically kind of the increasing popularity of ETFs. And someone came out from, it was in CNN, I read this article, sorry I can't reference it, but it was just that this is becoming a really increasingly popular strategy. So what is so good about these?
Well, the thing is that they're very well diversified and they're very cheap and they're easy to access. So, you don't have to be a sophisticated investor. You can choose a sector, and it doesn't even have to be a specific sector.
You're
you can
taking
actually
a cross-section of a market, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. But you can take the whole market. So there's an index or an ETF that follows the whole market. Or you can get an index that just follows the banks, or just an index that follows, certain sectors. They're cheap. I guess they're they're not new, but we're yet to see the problems. But I think that, like anything, when it all happens, everyone's going to make comments on what's going on. But I read an article recently where the drawdown in the US on the S&P 500 ETFs in the last 3 months was about $4 billion each month. So people are starting to draw down on that. And it behind the scenes, ETFs are quite complex because you've got to have a market maker who are buying the stock that represent that ETF. So, you know, there is quite a lot of complexity. And again, I think one of the most important things when it comes to investing is human behavior. We call it behavioral finance. And it's the emotion. So it's the herd mentality. If everyone wants to sell at the same time, what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. You know, and that's, I think, one of the biggest issues that we're going to see is when everyone starts to get scared and says, well, you know, we've had 8 years of great performance, let's pull our money. And then everyone starts to draw down on it. What effect is that going to have? Yeah. I still think it's worth having. I love certain ETFs and I follow them, and a lot of our clients have them, but I mix it up. You know, I like to have some hedge funds, I like to have some managed funds. ETFs in certain sectors aren't performing or never have performed as well, like for example the bond market or defensive assets, because it is a lot more complex and the margins are a lot tighter. So I think people still need to be aware and cautious. And I always say to my clients, cash is king and patience. Yeah. You know, I've got lots of my wealthiest clients will have a few $1 million in cash and they will never complain about the return because they know that when there's blood in the street, that means when everyone else is selling, they're going to be buying. If there's one thing I'd like everyone to walk away with is when the stock markets crash, money just doesn't disappear. It transfers from people that don't know what they're doing to people that know exactly what they're doing. And you're competing against those people, so you've got to be careful. Yeah, that's my two cents.
That's The Big Short, if anyone's seen that movie. Yeah. So let's stop talking about other people's businesses and we'll focus on our own business. And I want to talk to you, Sophie, about that. So you advise people about investing and how to structure their own business. So things like cash flow and getting the books in order. So obviously there's strategies with the money market, but I think one of the things is to invest in yourself in a way, and that's going to be the biggest security, whether it's to start a business on the side or just to really kind of strengthen the business. So if you've got how do you actually approach a business when you're looking to sort of clean it up? There's no point us investing until we get home base sorted out.
Yeah, I mean, every business is so different, depending on the type of business, but also depending on the personality of the business owner. I mean, normally we'd do a really thorough health check, and then sit down with the client and find out exactly what their goals are and what they want to achieve. Sorry, what was it?
So more about how do you approach it if for example, my business, and I'm not in a position to invest in markets because I don't know my financial situation. So what would I do with you? How do you help me with cash flow is the big one.
Yeah, I mean, cash flow is where most businesses fall down. It's I think something like 74% of businesses fail because of cash flow, and most of those are profitable businesses. So, you know, the first thing is education around what is the difference between the two, between profit and cash flow. And a lot of the time we get people coming in the door who, you know, the most common comment is, I don't understand, my reports say that I'm making money, but there's nothing in the bank. You know, so it's really educating people about what cash flow is and how to manage it. And also, you know, we see a lot of people in business who are chasing sales and they're chasing new customers, and they're not even thinking about whether that's actually making them any profit. Yeah. So it's really sort of tying all that in together, and making them understand that big picture of what makes a business work. You know, if you look at the big corporates, you know, they either bring in a profit-based CEO or a cash flow-based CEO, and it's very hard to improve profit and cash flow at the same time. You're normally sort of focusing on one or the other. So it's just really helping people understand how that works. So can you help us understand, because how are they linked? Because I look at the P&L and I can kind of understand that, but the same, you look at what's in the bank. What is happening there? They're obviously not inversely proportional, but what's sort of the link? Yeah, I mean, profit is obviously how much money you make after, you know, you've got your income, you've got your money going out, what's left is your profit. But cash flow, it all comes down to timing. So, you know, generally when you look at reports, they're not based on when the money has actually hit your bank account or when it's left your bank account. It's based on the time that you've incurred those costs or you've made those sales. So cash flow is about looking at the timing of it all, you know, and there are so many different ways that you can tweak it. I mean, I don't think there's there's one or two key ways to improve cash flow. It's probably tweaking maybe 10, 15 different strategies to improve
And
that.
you use Xero, I think, and so obviously we're becoming a lot more literate. We're actually able to understand Xero a lot more than MYOB ever, kind of those reports. So do you think people are actually going in and looking, or is part of your role to educate them on those reports?
Some people do, a lot don't.
Some feel nauseous.
Yeah, but then, we deal with creatives and designers and tech startups, and it's just kind of not their focus. And every business is different in terms of how it's going to affect their cash flow. For example, my business, we might grow, we might get a bunch of new customers, have to put on new staff, but pay my staff weekly. We might not bill that out, the work that they're actually doing, for another 2 months until the job's finished. Then we have to wait to get paid. So I know from looking historically at my numbers that cash flow is going to take a major dive probably 3 months after I hire someone. Okay. It's looking at those numbers with clients and their particular business and giving them those insights as to what affects their cash flow.
And I've got one more question on this, and it's probably to the physios in the room as well. So there's professions that are very driven by care and service, or like with creatives, the job they're doing, and less concerned about the money. How do you actually emphasise the importance of getting the books in order? And I guess it's unashamedly going for the kind of being in the black.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think financial stress is probably one of the biggest stresses that we all go through. And you can love what you do and you can be thoroughly involved in it and very passionate about it. But like I said before, money buys you freedom, and the freedom from that stress and that worry. So it's really, I think trying to get that across to clients and talking to them in a way that they can see that and they can understand it, and it's not seen as a selfish thing to want to make money.
And I like the focus of your book, because often everyone says you need to work as much on your business as in your business, but your book is also saying get that right so you can get back into your business and do what you love. So it's an important message.
Yeah, exactly. Because often what happens is a business will start up, you start up doing what you love, and then you get caught up in the day-to-day running of the business, and you become more of a manager as that business grows, and you stop doing whatever it is that you actually loved at the beginning. And the only way to get back to that is either to get rid of a whole bunch of customers and go small again, or it's to get to a point where you can afford to take on staff, that can, and really good staff that can run that for you. So,
well, let's chat about Acorns. I'd like to explore Acorns as sort of a model for startup growth, because you've gone through 3 rounds of maybe America as the prime example, how there was different venture capital rounds. What happens from an idea and then things starting to get traction? Can you talk us through your typical startup cycle, maybe using what's happened with Acorns?
Yeah. I think the first thing is the idea. There's got to be an idea. It's got to have legs, and I liked Acorn, so that's why I've joined the local business, because I see the legs on it. Once you get an idea, you go look for funding, and the first one's usually, we call it friends and family or angels, and everyone's got their own terminology around it. But you need something to get you up and running. And where I think, and again, disclaimer, this is my personal opinions. I think a lot of businesses fail because they're not revenue producing. They keep promising and promising and promising. And one thing we do with Acorns is every time we go for a round, and we've actually had 4, because Walter, the old investment banker, called the first one Series A when it was friends and family. So we've done Series D. But every time you go to raise more money, you have to put something on the table that says why you're worth more. Why should they invest more in you? Is the revenue stream picked up? Is there add-on products? Is there great partnerships or something? So you've got to have it committed, or know where you're going, and have that. And I don't like the term, but that journey mapped out ready so that the investors can see it.
And then what about exit strategies? I know for some investors, they actually don't like when people have an exit strategy, because you should be sticking with your kind of goals. So what's the plan with Acorn? What's the future? Crystal ball.
That's a tough one. I'm in the US next month talking to them about it. There is some very strong partnerships coming up with PayPal. So in the US, PayPal works a bit different. You drop your money into a PayPal account and it sits there until you use it. So while the money's sitting there not being used, hey, throw it into an Acorns account, and that'll create a hell of a lot more users for us and hopefully for PayPal. That may cause a buyout, trade sale or something like that pre-IPO, whether the IPO market's there when we need to go there. Acorns isn't at the stage yet where we will IPO.
An IPO is independent.
Initial public offering.
Initial public
So it's
offering.
hitting the stock market.
It's not my wheelhouse.
It's we're not there. We don't want to do that at the moment. I think that if somebody wrote a big check and said, "Here you go," the boys over there might take that.
How would that affect the Australian operations?
We have tag and drag rights. So that means if they offer us a price and we can, otherwise we cut ties and we're standalone. We are a completely independent standalone business. We don't rely on them for anything. We have like for example, we've added probably 4 new features in 18 months that they don't even have in the US and don't want, and one of them, say, the superannuation. So if you withdraw money from Acorns, instead of going back to your bank account, you can put it into your super as a contribution. They don't have that concept in the US, so they're not interested in it. The ethical portfolio is new to us. They don't have that in the US. So we are completely standalone, and we are ready for that.
Yeah.
If that
And I think there's a huge appetite for this ethical investment as well. So let's talk, why did you guys bring that on? Was it pressure or was it demand?
It's social media pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we understand it and accept that, but it's social media says, look, I really want Acorns. I don't understand what an ETF is. Who am I following? And as Mark said, it could follow an index, so the ASX 200. And then we'll have somebody out the back of Burke will go, well, I don't want to be on the ASX 200 because there's, I'll pick on CBA. CBA.
Let's not. Tobacco company.
Tobacco company there. CBA funding. So I don't want to do that. Find me a portfolio. But the way that we've constructed our portfolios is the ASX 200 ETF is in every one of them because it is sort of balanced. So then the pressure for that was to create an ethical portfolio, and that's what we've done. And a lot of our product development has been driven by our customers. And I think one more point I would like to add on the capital raise, so the US have raised their money. We, off our customer requests when did I think we released it the 20th of November, and it took us sort of 15 days. We offered a capital raise to the Australian customers for a minimum parcel of $5,000, and it was taken up within 14 days to get us over 1.2 million. Yeah. And what that did, we had a budget or a cash flow for 3 years, and there's a few other competitors coming out in that 3-year period. So what we've done is our marketing spends over here with that extra 1.2, because the business could fund itself for that 3 year, but by getting this money in, we can then spend a bit more on marketing and sort of really capture the customers.
I want to ask you then about the 5,000, seeing you brought it up, because there was the idea that it was an illiquid asset.
Yep.
So what kind of investment were people making into the Acorn?
The majority of them is the 5,000. There's a couple of bigger guys that have put in bigger checks.
But there's no guarantee of return?
No, it's unlisted.
Yeah.
So it's just a limited company.
Yeah.
Not a PTY limited or proprietary limited, but it's a limited company, not listed.
And so tell me as well, because I am a novice to this, what different rules govern something that is listed on the exchange? There's obviously a set of rules that you have to abide by as a company.
Well, as a financial planner, we've got what we call an APL, which is an approved product list. And basically the bank has, I think it's 40 variables that they actually plug investments into, and they back test it. So for example, they'll look at an investment and they'll see how it performed if there was stagflation, hyperinflation, a credit crisis. And so if it doesn't tick the box, it doesn't go on the APL. So a lot of investors miss out on these smaller investments. Now, they're high risk, high return. So, I wouldn't recommend to any client that they put a big amount of money into any type of investment like that, because it is high risk, high return. But sometimes those high risks pay off, and that's when clients make money.
And is that where you need to be a sophisticated investor to have 2 million of assets, or it doesn't matter, you don't actually, because you're looking at me like I don't know.
No.
Because it's a sophisticated investor, because I looked at the Gavera crash, and most of those investors that you had to be a sophisticated investor and have 2 million of assets to go into Gavera. Is that with all of these kind of?
Well, in our world, we're very restricted. So basically, you've got, we call it the APL, the field in which we can operate, and we can't step out of it. And we can, in some instances, go out if the client requests it. But I mean, really, clients really don't know a lot about investing, and so they stick with what we create for them.
Yeah.
But I guess that's part of what I like about what Acorns is doing, is it's opening up the market and it's making it more competitive.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems in Australia is that the amount of fees that people pay, it's astronomical.
Yeah.
In superannuation last year, I think it was $32 billion in fees. I mean, that could go back to the client. I mean, if you add up admin fees, investment fees, so the investment fees, the MER and ICR, they're hidden fees. You add that up, and then an advisor fee, you're looking at 2.5%. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you want to get a return of 8%, you're looking at 10.5 real to actually get that 8 net. So I think it's great that these companies like Acorn are coming into the industry, and that we're getting access to more products like ETFs, and that clients are becoming more aware of what's out there, because we need everyone to put pressure on the big boys so that they can lower their costs.
Yeah. And do you think there's the emergence of robo-investment where it's almost algorithms and deep data is being mined? It seems that's kind of still fairly new in this industry, but do you think that'll change how you practice?
Yeah, it is. I thought it would, and I went to a convention in Japan, and we were talking about it, and I was convinced, because I'm young, I'm 39, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be the next big thing, and I was so wrong. I don't think it's going to take off as quick as people think. And the other thing is, robo-planning or robo-investing is different to what we believe it is. So it's not, and this is the difference between what a broker and a financial planner do. Those algorithms, when it comes to investment, all they do is they play with the asset allocation. So they're basically playing with that. So if the Australian market goes up, then it'll reduce that to keep it within that asset allocation. Whereas robo-planning, truly the way I saw it was, well, I want strategic advice. So how do I, get the full pension? So I've got clients that are worth more than $3 million, and they're getting the full pension from the government. How do you do that? Well, I know a computer's not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
So I truly believe that this robo-planning is being blown out of context, because it's more about the investment side of things, and not robo-planning where you'd think it's a robot doing your financial planning.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the But I do believe that someone will come up with, algorithms and ways to actually make it so that your journey as a client won't be with a financial planner, it will be with a computer, but it'll be more of a basic relationship.
Well, while we've got some real people up here, I'm going to throw it open to some questions to the panel, and the best question we can give a book to. Has anyone got a good question? A curly one for the panel?
I have one.
Okay.
To the Acorn establishment, Australia is really traditional when it comes to finance. So when you say marketing, what is it that you're actually doing in terms of changing that? Because obviously as a startup and something like linked to a larger organisation, that organic growth can only last for so long.
Definitely, yeah.
So if you're as independent, you say to your US, I guess parent company, what is it that you do within this environment to make sure that growth is more than organic?
Yeah, I think it's probably, everybody says it's traditional, but by what we saw with the early adopters of having a wait list for a product that wasn't even out there of 22,000 people, by hitting them on the social media platform, because that's the only advertising, paid advertising we've done is on Facebook. We've done a little bit on Google search words, AdWords and things like that, but it's predominantly been on social media, and that's our target market. That's what we're after. So finance is definitely traditional in Australia, but it's the way reaching people. And look, I use it as an example. I own a pub, so I've got young kids worrying about their super. So they get their first paycheck and it says the super contribution. I pay super monthly for those guys. They'll come to me 2 days later and say, oh, this isn't in my super account. Where is my $27? But social media's given, or the internet and all this, everything's given them the understanding. I didn't know what super was when I was 18 working in a pub. I had no idea, but it's given them the platform to understand and ask the question. So that's changing, and it's giving them the education and the access and information to go, hey, what about this? Where can I see this? And so our customer acquisition has just been on Facebook.
Okay, so you think you're dominating in your niche market, right?
I wouldn't say dominating, but we're fortunate not to have a specific competitor. There's stock spots, there's Pocketbook and things like that, which are budgeting tools, but we're not a budgeting tool. You don't have to put anything into Acorns apart from money. And that's your roundups and things. If you go to any of the other platforms, you've got to say, I want to spend this, I want to do this. What is my leftover? Then we'll invest that. And then you pick some way to invest it. So it sort of all does it all for you and then provides the information that you need. So I absolutely, and I had this conversation before, we're in a customer acquisition phase. I'm not a marketer. I'm an accountant. I like my Excel spreadsheets, and I'm getting a bit excited about the data. But this is the data's starting to come out, and you know our demographics. 75% of our customers are between 18 and 35 or 34, but more importantly, 75% of those are between 26 and 34. So that's our sweet spot. I've got somebody with that's 87. Who just does it on the web app, doesn't have a mobile phone, doesn't have anything. He rings up, he sends me letters, and he just does it on the web app. So we're hitting that wider range, and I think, and just to give some numbers, and because we modelled ourselves off the US because that's all we had to go by. Their average account balance is $56. Wow. Our average account balance this morning was $891.42. So it's the value of the dollar. We've had to scrap all those marketing plans because they have got the 18 to 23 because they offer a model that's free for students or under 23s. We don't do that here in Australia, and our licence won't let us discriminate against other people, against different cohorts. We have to charge everybody the $1.25. So whilst I know that's going to dry up and I'm hanging on each month, I'm getting my number and it's like, yeah, that's my customer acquisition. Yes, they got away with it for another month. We do have to look at other methods. And I was saying, so do I put a big billboard up at the airport? Do I sponsor a football team? Am I on the back of buses? I don't know. I don't have the cash flow to do that right now. So each month I say, oh, they got away with it. Another month.
And while you're getting great press at the moment as well, it seems to be working.
Yeah.
That's a book-deserving question. Has anyone else got? We'll take one more question. Rob.
So given Mark's comments on behavioural finance earlier, which I thought were really, really relevant, and ETS, and when the market turns red and how people behave quite badly, in terms of Acorns, how are you guys, I mean, they say inevitably there's going to be more crashes in the future, etc., you know, as part of the market behaviour. How are you guys prepared for that? And do you see that sort of day trading behaviour in your accounts?
Yeah. It's, with this 18 months of weather data, it entertains me. And I'll give you one very quick example. A young bloke rings up, yes, I want to get in. He's put his sort of $100 in on a Wednesday, and then at 10:39 on a Friday night, he's going to withdraw $17.50. Rang on Monday and said, mate, I want my $17.50. I didn't get it. My friend had to buy the beers at the pub. I said, mate, no. You've got to sell the shares. I can't sell them at Friday night. I can only sell them Monday when the market's open. It takes 2 days to settle. You'll get your money on Wednesday night. Okay, right, fine. Next Friday night, I deliberately looked at it again, 10:35, $22.50. But what he learnt was he got up on Saturday morning and cancelled his withdrawal. Normally, because what he says is, I've got my NAB accounts, I get onto my internet banking, I transfer $17.50 and my debit card works. I've spent $17.50. You've saved me from spending. You know, his mate had to buy him the beer. You saved money, mate. So it's that behavioural. And like one of the girls in the office puts all her paycheck straight into Acorns and then drips $250 back a week to her tap and go card or a debit card so that it controls her spending.
But so can I add to that? The GFC has also taught some good lessons, and one of the good lessons is that people learnt that the markets do come back, and you know it's about being patient, and that's the opportunity, I think, of putting more money in because you're buying more units at a cheaper price. And that way you can dollar cost average, bring that price down and start making some money.
So, we send out weekly newsletters, and the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks has always had that section. The portfolio theory, modern portfolio theory that we use is whenever the market's down, put $5 in every week. No matter the market's up here or the market's down here. Over the long run, you'll have a better return. Okay. But it's simplifying it for them.
So the hope is that continually hitting your users with that message, it will bed in so when there is a correction or crash in the markets, there'll still be that liquidity there.
Yeah, we have little very clean little white sheets that says, you know, what is compound interest, what is dollar cost averaging, and I write it, so it's in Newcastle speak, so people can understand. And it's called Nova Coastrian again. But they're the most liked posts on our Facebook and our Instagram post. And the biggest one is, what is the ASX? Because people pick up the Daily Telly and they go 2.49 billion wiped off the ASX. It was like 1.1%. But the general punter doesn't understand that. So he now knows what the ASX means. And that's our most liked post. And to get that education and awareness to him, and then hopefully he'll pass it down to his generation because he's been using it, it'll create that financial education.
And it's a perfect spot to end, because I was thinking as well, the whole thing is about education here. So I'm going to ask each of you to give your best tip, like a single thing that you're happy to kind of pass on to the crowd here. So who wants to go first?
Mine is time and patience. You know, just chip away at it, put money. The acorns theory, just apply it to everything. It's you know, I can't stress it enough. I've seen so many things go wrong and so many things go really well. And everyone has an excuse. I've heard it so many times. I don't have any money, yet they're having a beer for, you know, they go out with their mates, and it's a matter of putting a little bit of money away all the time, every time, and as your, you know, disposable income increases, start putting more away, and compound interest will do wonders. Just let it do, and enjoy life. Hey, it's not all about putting money away. It's about enjoying it, and I think that's where the younger generations have got it really right. They love spending money. It's the older generation, they just want to hold on. I mean, I've got a lady, she's got no family, she lives in a house worth $15 million and has no money, and it's just as simple as selling the house and buying one for 10 million, and she'll have 5 million left. But nah, she wants to hold on to it. So, you know, I think it's about enjoying life, and that's what money's for. It's to give us that freedom. Yeah. So yeah, that's my.
Sophie, what's your tip?
God, there's so many tips I could give, but I think...
And yours come with a glass of wine. In the book, there's a glass of wine per
every
chapter.
we teamed up with the guys at Naked Wine, and they matched a wine to each chapter. Just to make it
nice.
a bit more palatable. Look, I think, you know, one thing I would say is that technology has opened up so many opportunities, and for a lot of people, you know, they might not have the funds to be able to invest, but we've seen a lot of people over the last couple of years doing different types of investments. So whether it's through something like Acorn, or it's working with tech startups and doing kind of a hybrid paid/equity model. We've seen a lot of people doing that, where they're working on the principle of, you know, they'll work on a consultancy basis, whatever it might be, with those types of companies, and take a lower fee but take equity in the company, working on the principle that if they do that with 5 or 10 different companies, one of those might pay off. So yeah, there's a lot of different opportunities, I think, and just, you know, there are things that you can do to invest without necessarily having a lot of money available to put in.
And Brendan, finally.
Well, I'm boring, so...
Acorns.
The best... Oh, I can't. My dad said to me when I was growing up, because my first share was Foster's, because I love beer, and I lost everything. So the lesson he taught me was, you never put in more than what you can afford to lose. Okay, and keep it simple. Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid. If I don't know, we talked about the trees, wouldn't get involved in something that I don't understand, and maybe a bit of a control freak too. If I can't control it as well, I probably wouldn't go on it.
And I think that's what's great about our own business. You are at the driver's seat with a lot of that. So, well, please thank the panel. It's been incredible to have you guys up. We've got some gifts for you, so don't race off just yet. So that's the end of the evening, but I just want to also announce next month we're going to do the business of design. So we're going to have Louise Olsen from Dinosaur Designs, and Alex Lottazine, who's an amazing designer and interior designer as well, and then Anne-Marie Sargent, who is in charge of the Authentic Design Alliance, and is very fiery, so it's going to be a very interesting conversation. But thank you so much, and thank you for coming tonight.